Welcome, virtual world. My name is Jen Stojkovic, and I am the Executive Director of SF City. What do you guys think of my setup? It's almost as if we're at the real SF City office. Thank you so much to everybody who is tuning in today. We're really excited about today's panel conversation. It's a pretty crazy time right now. I think for anybody in the tech industry, anybody looking to break into the tech industry, this is a super timely conversation, and we're excited for what we have in store today. I'm going to quickly tell you about who SF City is, and then I have some opening remarks from Lisa Countryman-Quiros, who is the CEO of JVS. So, we are San Francisco's Tech Trade Association. And what that really means is my job is to represent San Francisco's tech industry. And I get to do that in a number of ways. We work with the government, we work with policymakers, we work with community leaders, and we get to have really important conversations and bring tech in to be part of the solution and to be part of making San Francisco the best place to live and work in the entire world. And so part of that work means we get to convene really important conversation like today. We were founded in 2012. And we have been working with many of these folks that are on today's call for many years building this city. Today is a really important conversation because in particular, it's a very, very difficult time right now for our city. So we are hoping that you can make and learn some really interesting connections for the tech industry. So without further ado, Lisa Countryman-Quiros, CEO of JVS, let's bring you up to say a couple opening remarks about today's crucial conversation.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for pulling together this amazing event. I want to welcome everybody to the first One City Forum event of the year. If you aren't familiar with us already, we're a group of San Francisco tech and nonprofit leaders brought together by SF City to focus on finding creative ways to bring together the Bay Area community to learn from each other. We call it networking with a purpose. As tech companies are presented with opportunities to give back, our mission has become to engage San Francisco tech companies and their employees in the local community. Now more than ever, we believe your home must be a priority, starting with a local talent pipeline with events like Breaking into Tech. JVS joined SF City and the One City Forum because we strongly believe not only in important thought leadership events like this, but the power of networking. It is a core skill that we impart to our clients and our participants. We are a nonprofit that connects job seekers from across our community with high demand occupations in growing sectors like tech. And we know that understanding the job market is the most fundamental step in a successful job search. That's why we're so excited for all of our participants to hear from you today, to hear about where opportunities are growing now and where you predict they're going to grow in the future. Never in our lifetimes have we experienced such a dramatic shift in circumstance as we have over the last several weeks. I want to thank Jennifer and the SF City team for pulling this impressive panel of thought leaders together who will share with us their industry insights. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, so I've got some quick housekeeping notes, and then we will turn it over to our esteemed panel. First and foremost, does everybody see at the bottom here, there's a Q&A button. So you have the chance throughout today's conversation to submit a question. At the end of the event, we have some time to answer audience questions. I know we have some really, really cool thought leaders who are going to be talking today. And so this is really your chance to talk directly to these leaders about the future of this industry, get some great tips on how you can break into the tech industry. And so we will have time allotted at the end for that. The Q&A is going to be open the entire time, so you can let it fill up, and I will get to them a little bit later today. We will also be recording today, so this webinar is being recorded in live stream, so if you missed something, don't worry, we're going to send out the link afterwards. Lastly, we have a really cool little social media campaign going on right now, so you can tag SF City. We are SF_CITI. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and you can use the hashtag #BreakIntoTech. We'd love to know about things that you find surprising about breaking into the tech industry. And of course, we will be featuring some of your responses in our recap. So before we get started and bring the panel on, I like to do a quick show of hands virtually, who we have tuning in today. So you're going to see a poll launch on your screen in 1 minute. We'd love to know, what industry do you currently or want to work in? Okay, we're filling up, we're filling up. We got 83% of y'all have voted. Any other last votes? Okay. All right, I'm going to share the results. 72% of y'all are working or want to work in the tech industry. Well, that's not a surprise considering this event is called Breaking into Tech. So you're in the right place. Okay. Now that we have that out of the way and we know who we're talking to, I'm going to bring up each of our speakers. Let's start with Ketan Anjaria, who is the CEO of Hire Club. Welcome, Ketan. All right. Let's bring up Ephraim Beiser, who's the Economic Graph Manager for LinkedIn. Welcome, Ephraim. And lastly, let's bring up Rachel Yeager, who is the Director of Global Talent Acquisition at Zendesk. Hey, Rachel. Okay, we got everybody's mics. Okay, Ketan, you're unmuted. You guys are still muted, Ephraim and Rachel. Let's get this thing started. So, first things first, let's start with you, Rachel. How has this COVID-19 pandemic affected your workplace, and how is your company changing and adapting right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like many other tech companies, I think we're on week 7 or 8, it's kind of blending together. The week before the Bay Area shut down, Zendesk had us all go remote. 20 offices in all different regions of the world. And so we had already had pretty diverse workforce in that we're in 20 offices. We also have remote locations. So we're very used to being on Zoom. Everything's Zoom enabled at Zendesk. So we did go remote pretty quickly. Now that didn't mean that it didn't take some getting used to from the team because we're very social creatures on the recruiting team. So we've been adapting to having virtual meetings, learning how to communicate better, all of that. But that obviously, has been a big shift for Zendesk because we have almost 4,000 employees that are mostly used to being in offices. So.
Okay, and what about Ketan? Mr. Hire Club, how are things changing over there? And if you want to tell a little bit about the Hire Club platform as well.
Yeah, obviously it's been challenging. We're a small startup and we help people succeed in their careers with career coaching. And we have this fabulous community of 31,000 people on Facebook that we help, find new jobs and change careers. It's affected us as a business. We had to lay off, we had to apply for a PPP loan, which we luckily got, which was not an easy process, but nope. I think there's a lot of fear right now with everybody. Companies are taking time to hire and people are fearful of what's going to happen next. And how do you manage that fear? How do you find positivity? How do you find a way to stay connected when we're all feeling disconnected? And I think this is one of the things we really work on. We've obviously moved a lot of things over to video and live streaming. We were actually doing a lot of that. Last year, we had done already 100,000 minutes of virtual meetings with our clients. So this is a natural progress for us. I think one of the things right now is, how can you be nimble? How can you adapt and adjust, right? Think about what a virus does. It mutates and changes, and that's how it grows, right? But one of the things and ways you can fight that is you can mutate and change. And I think that's a really important thing right now in terms of finding ways where you can either learn new skills or adapt and figure out like, okay, what can I do different? Because the same things that used to work aren't going to work anymore, right? And I think that also means there's a lot of positivity there because new things can be creative things. There's a lot of opportunity right now. And we're seeing that happen to a lot of people. We're actually still seeing people get raises. We're still people seeing fine jobs, but they have to be new ways of doing it. There was a woman the other day, in our group that did a TikTok job application. And it went viral. She had millions of viewers, and it was brilliant. She was trying to get a job on TikTok, and it was the first time I said someone had used TikTok to apply for a job, and it was just so well done. She adapted to the new medium, which is, I think a lot of us are going to have to do that.
That's awesome. Wow, TikTok. I don't even have the app. This just made me feel really old. Wow. I guess that's where we're at. Ephraim, over at LinkedIn, I mean, you guys are getting like a front row seat to everything going on. What's it been like?
Yeah, so I can kind of speak, I think, one as just as an employer, what LinkedIn is going through and what that change has been like. And then I can also share a bit about what is happening in terms of the platform, because we are seeing the ups and downs of the economy all at once. Our entire team globally, 16,000 employees, is remote. China is slowly going back into the office now as they're on the back end of the public health crisis. And so I think that is, a big thing. Relationships matter as a big part of LinkedIn as a platform and as a culture. And we're trying now to build relationships and manage relationships and maintain relationships all virtually. One of the big changes, like I'm a parent, I have 2 little kids. They are 2 and 1. And LinkedIn as an employer is having to provide, and I imagine other companies, I know other companies are doing this, supports for parents to be flexible at home with given, like, I have to kind of work around when my kids are napping or not napping. And so that's a real challenge, and be able to be flexible with my work hours as a result of that. And so I think a lot of companies are trying to figure out how to just best support employees where they're at right now, because this is unprecedented. And that's probably an overused word at this point, but it is a kind of conflation of a perfect storm of so many variables coming together. I think, and it comes to like what the platform is doing and how we're seeing this unfold. There are some companies and some industries where we are seeing a major decrease in terms of positions or job posts on LinkedIn. At the same time, there are other positions, and we can get into which ones, that are growing in demand on LinkedIn, because those positions and those industries are part of the response, usually often case in a public health, or otherwise help people stay at home. Think about folks who do deliveries and just logistics. For us, that also means we have to really think strategically about prioritization. 3 months ago, we prioritized based on the tightest labor market that many of us may ever see. And now we are talking about a vastly different labor market where there are a lot of people who are not working, may or may not yet be looking for work, just given the nature of unemployment insurance and the pandemic unemployment assistance programs. So that has also been a new dynamic. And we're trying to figure out how do we best support affected job seekers and the affected employers.
Okay, so what are some of the biggest jobs that you're seeing, or role types that you're seeing pop up on the platform?
So I'll give 2 lists. The first is the most in-demand jobs over like the last 2 weeks. And many of these you'll see a kind of common thread. Dietary aid, certified nursing assistant, radiology technologist, speech language pathologist, doctor, occupational therapist, patient care assistant, licensed practical nurse, case management nurse, and social worker. That just says these are the most in-demand jobs right now, are helping and are the part of this public health response. And that is just, I think, that makes a lot of sense as to why that is. And a couple of weeks ago, we saw a number of positions in retail, like not food service, but grocery store retail. 7-Eleven was one of the companies with the most job posts a few weeks ago. So you can imagine that is just kind of who's open right now. We also have a top in-demand remote jobs. And I think this could be interesting because these are mostly tech jobs. Full stack engineer, DevOps engineer, software engineer, computer sales associate, account executive, institutional sales, solutions architect, and sales engineer. And so you can think about that as a lot of tech roles and sales roles that could easily be done remotely. And these are also roles that are typically at tech companies, in many cases, tech companies that are growing in service of a lot of the industries that are helping with public health response. So that's what we're seeing, at least right now, in terms of what is in demand. Overall, we've seen a 28% increase in a posting for remote jobs. That's probably a combination of new jobs that are remote and jobs that were previously would have been in an office that now are open to having remote workers.
That makes sense. I mean, this is some pretty solid data from, like, we're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. Just a reminder to everyone, you can continue to submit your questions throughout the talk. And then I'd love to hear from, Rachel from an employer's perspective, and then Keitan after that, working on the ground with the job seekers. What were some of the hottest roles that, you would say over the last year or so you were hiring for, or your industry was hiring for, and how has that changed?
Yeah, I can go first. So I am the director of global non-tech. So I actually specialize in everything except for heavy engineering. I would say that we were hiring an unprecedented amount of salespeople in most of our offices. So people at all different levels, as our product is SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. It services all those different industries. So as we grow and our offerings grow, so do the need for the salespeople, like sales engineers, as an example as well, that pair along with that sales team, customer success that works after we close the deal to make sure that our product is sticky, and that our customers are actually using it and getting good use out of it. So some of those teams are, like, we call them go-to-market teams, right? Frontline salespeople installing the product and then working with the customer right afterwards. Also a large growth of marketing roles all across different marketing functions. So that's one of the industries that's had to pivot absolutely the fastest. Is we had a huge event. It's called Relate. Zendesk does it about once a year. It's our biggest flagship event. It was in Miami this year, and it had to be canceled the weekend before. It was right as the pandemic was really starting to slam into the US. So those team members have had to take all of their content and put it virtual. So you can imagine what we're doing here today, but on thousands and thousands of people scale, to break that all down, what was an immersive on-site experience. So I would say that those are the biggest positions that we were hiring for in the last year, and that was really my biggest headcount growth on the non-tech side.
And what about you, Keitan? What are you seeing on the ground? You're muted, by the way.
Interestingly enough, I think seeing a lot of demand for great project managers and product managers. There's new problems to be solved. And for the last year, we saw a lot of people looking for people with experience in both of those things, in launching and creating wonderful products as, all these new startups were being funded. Obviously, the engineering roles were super hot. We saw a lot of demand for great design roles as well, right? Specifically at the mid to higher levels. I think design obviously is coming, has come to the front now for a lot of products, and every product has a great design. And so that was a big one. And then one of the other big ones was customer success, right? And I want to make that different from customer support. Customer support being how can I help customers do their best? And customer success is how can I make sure they understand the product and love the product, right? And that we are, creating a set of customers who not just only want to purchase a product, but are evangelists for the product, right? And that can be fully remote. That's a fully remote role, right? You don't need to be on site for that. So customer success, I think, is a big problem, especially in B2B and SaaS companies, because you're talking about these large, high-value deals, and you need someone that can really be an evangelist, not just for the company. And that is really about understanding the user, right? So those two. We were seeing a lot of, which is honestly, that is a lot of what, I don't like to use the word soft skills, but they're human skills, right? How you relate to people, how do you have empathy for people, how do you understand people's problems and needs, right? So that was a very valuable skill set. And I still think we'll see a lot of that, yeah.
I would say that customer success is just vital to keeping our current customers on board with Zendesk, to make sure we're addressing their needs. Salesperson is there in the beginning, and they're there to get the deal on board and obviously to help expand, but customer success is really kind of the lifeblood of what makes sure that our customers don't churn, that they're happy, that they're getting, the support from our support team that we need. They're really that connective tissue. And I agree that is a lot of done over Zoom. Right? We use Zoom, so that's why I use that as an example, but you are really, really effective and able to touch a lot of customers in a day.
All right, so I'm going to ask the obvious question here, and we'll start with you, Ephraim. Do you think the tech industry is going to ride this wave of remote the whole way, or do you think we're going to turn back around?
So I can go a couple ways on this. It's funny. We've had the technology to operate generally remote workforce for a very long time, and we've actually done the opposite. We've actually tried to get people to be in the same place because we value people being, we think there's value from having people interact so casually, and those ideas that get exchanged and that collaboration, when you're able to just, you know, put your head up and see the person next to you and work with them on something is really valuable. At the same time, that was pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, I think we could see a lot of companies embrace a more remote workforce, be open to workers living in different parts of the world and working, as long as they can, you know, kind of meet productivity requirements and work hours that allow them to collaborate and have probably opportunities for informal collaboration. So it could go. I mean, what we know is that at least, you know, I don't know when LinkedIn's office is going to open again. We know they have not told us when that's going to happen. And if we think about the requirements of when an office with, like our office in San Francisco with 1,500 plus people in it, with a cafeteria and crowded elevators and a crowded coffee shop and 200 conference rooms that are used from 9 to 5 every day, it's going to be hard for us to operate that like we did until there's all the adequate protections in place. And so assuming we don't know when that comes, but assuming that's far enough away that this could become something that people build a lot of muscle memory around. And so I think that if companies see that the productivity doesn't dip or maybe even increases because people are happy not commuting, that's probably good. And I think we might see some kind of medium thing where some people are just more open to, well, you know, there's an office in the city, you live in the city, but like maybe you only go in a couple days a week, and that now is more normal. So that's, I think, maybe this happy medium, as opposed to everybody being distributed all over the world more, that they would actually maybe working in all one place, but going to the office to go to work would not be something you'd have to do as much anymore.
Makes sense. What about you, Rachel? What do you think?
I agree with what Ephraim said. I think that we're learning a lot about how to communicate better and not relying so much on what we call hallway conversations. And I think that's a good thing because I'm in the headquarters, right? San Francisco. We have 20 offices, like I said. And what is not always fair for people that are doing great work and senior in other offices is they don't necessarily get the hallway conversations of the headquarters, right? And it's like, oh, well, we already worked it out, and then you're in a different time zone, so here's what we decided. As opposed, you really have to reach out. You have to think about how you're going to communicate. Is this email? Is it over video? Who do I need in the meeting? And it actually makes you flush things out a little bit more too before you bring a group together. So I think there's a lot of positives. I'm a recruiter, obviously. I love being around people. I'm like 100% extroverted on every test you take. So I do miss those conversations, but I do agree that I think it'll be a combination of having some office space, people able to go in and collaborate, but then also get work done at home where you're not caught by all those conversations in the hallway. You do have more critical time to think. So I do agree.
I keep hearing from a lot of our different members, there's this concept of a remote workforce with a communal space for conference rooms, or, you know, maybe you can pop in maybe once a week to meet up with the team, but in general, workforce is being stationed at home. And then that way you don't need 1,500 desks, right? Maybe then you only have 150 or something like that.
We actually had pilot that at Zendesk several months prior to this pandemic. We call it a roam program. That's what we call it internally. You don't have a desk with a, you know, Rachel Yeager name tag. You have neighborhoods. So we had like a recruiting neighborhood, and that's where you generally go to congregate. But all the desks are set up like visitor desks. There's a lot more collaborative spaces, more couches, that kind of thing. And what it did is it had me sit next to like my HR VP, my HR partner. It had me sit next to other people on the people team because we're all one floor. And you could theoretically just keep doing that throughout the building. And so it did make for less of that feeling that I need to be stuck at my desk. I only talk to the people next to me, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Keitan, do you think people would prefer to go fully remote? Do you think people would take a smaller salary if they could work remotely?
So we had the genius idea to sign a lease on March 1st. So that was pretty, for an office, so that was pretty interesting. And we were in it for 1 week before the shutdown orders came to play. And you know, now we're fully remote and it's great. I think remote in lots of ways opens up a lot of opportunities, right? You don't have to live in the Bay Area, and you don't have to live in a very expensive area to get access to a high paying job, right? We were seeing that, I think, with lots of roles, or a limited set of roles before, like with developers and designers on the very high end of things. Now that's going to open up to a much wider set of people. Anyone can work from anywhere, right? And now you're going to be doing hiring remotely, which means you never even met the person, which, you know, we were already comfortable with based on the nature of our team and what we were doing. But I think that's going to be a really unique skill set, which is, how do I find the trust to build and hire someone? So I think we're going to see a lot of that transition happening. It's that the companies haven't transitioned yet into those new processes. So we're going to have some patience, because how does a recruiter hire someone remotely they've never met? How do you onboard an employee remotely that you've never met, right? How do you create the culture that you want when you don't have the cultural in-person kind of associations that you normally do? So I think there's going to be challenges on that front. I will say communication is what I found is the #1 skill for everybody right now. You know, text messaging and phone calls and video can only do so much. So being a great writer, being a great listener, and able to like really connect to people is such an important skill right now, because remote work, you do lose that real-time communication, but you can also have really thoughtful communication, right? You can take time to think through your thoughts and really present things together. So I think the people who are able to really write amazingly well and spread their ideas in a way, whether you're looking for a job or you're at a job, whether you're hiring someone or looking to get hired, I think absolutely right now with remote work, communication is the #1 thing.
Keitan, I think that's a great point, because one of the things I can imagine is going to happen is the skills you need for almost any job, because every job at many tech companies is now going to be at least partially remote. So that makes a whole different set of skills, maybe even an additional set of skills required to be successful. Communication was one that, you know, I think is spot on, especially writing, because so much of that communication now will happen via writing. But I think about like general time management skills, and because you're not going to have like the schedule around you that is kind of maybe reinforced by your company culture to keep you honest, keep you active, to keep you working. You may have a different set of distractions at home that may be better or worse, harder or less difficult to avoid than at the office. I've always preferred working at the office. So this is definitely a big change for me. So I think time management skills are something that people would have to invest in more, and just kind of broad project management skills. Some of the skills that might make you really good at some of the jobs that are now likely to be remote. If that job was still at the office, that skill alone may not have you be successful in a remote work environment. And so I think one of the things I would encourage folks who are thinking about how to work in tech, being able to describe having skills that'll be really important to working remotely is going to be really important as part of kind of your narrative that you would, when you talk to someone like Rachel on the recruiting side, they're gonna be asking like, what's it like to be, can you work remote? Are you okay being in that kind of environment? I think that's going to be some of the story or interview questions you all should be prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel, let's hear kind of what interviewing is going to look like. What can job seekers be doing to prepare for these virtual interviews?
Yeah, so we did this really quickly, right? We pivoted to almost in, I think it was 2 business days. We pivoted to all Zoom interviewing globally, which was a big motion, right? We had hundreds and hundreds of candidates in play. So, you know, and we're also learning, right? Like as we go, we're week 7 or 8. So we are having to pivot really quickly. What we have, and we're also just so you know, it's not just candidates needing to prepare. We're also working to prepare our hiring managers as well on our side. Like there's a lot of training that goes into how do you connect with someone over Zoom that you could be hiring for the next several years, right? People have really relied on that feeling, which I think is a positive thing for both candidate and hiring manager. I think it requires people to do a little bit more prep work, because you can't rely quite as much on that casualness of walking in, settling down, all of that. And I think that what people can do to really prepare themselves for a Zoom interview is some basics, right? We say headphones, really important, because the background noise, you'd be surprised, even if you think you're in a quiet spot and you're projecting the volume out, the background noise can really get in the way of a great interview and an okay, I didn't really understand their strategy, story, that kind of thing. I find that when I dig in with a really good candidate and I got tough feedback from a hiring manager, I ask like, how was the audio? How was the visual? And a lot of times that is the differentiator, right? Is that if you can't hear someone and you're only hearing every third word, or they've got some dog or something in the background, it's just human nature to be like a little bit frustrated and just kind of want to skip through. So I think it's super important to go back to basics. Make sure your camera is like this. You're not like this. Because again, that's a strange way to start a conversation. And like the audio, test it with a friend. Like make sure like you really have good audio. At the end of the day, we're bugging our hiring managers too, but that's what you can do. It sounds really simple. Most of the basics of interviewing still apply. It's just making sure that they can hear you and see you well. So that's what it's kind of simple, I know.
Yeah, I would add to that, presentation really matters in these interviews. And we as humans naturally judge things really easily, but like investing in a good light. I went out and bought a professional camera light and investing in a good microphone. And because we don't know when this is going to change, and those things are going to be very valuable. So a ring light or a great diffuser or a great camera. Right now, I know all the webcams are sold out everywhere. It's impossible to get a good one. But I also noticed lighting makes a huge difference. Like everyone here has got great lighting, and that's fantastic. The other thing is being free of distractions. I think in video conversations in general, you have your phone next to you or you have notifications turned on, and it's really easy to already be disconnected through video. So whatever you can do, what I like to recommend candidates before an interview, 5 minutes before, put your phone in the other room, turn off all your notifications, and just take a minute to breathe. Just center yourself, right? Just really calm yourself down and think about this person that you're going to meet and ask them, figure out what questions you want to ask them, right? And I think being really present at a time when it's hard to be present together is really important.
Yep. I definitely have do not disturb my Apple Watch before starting. I think we all did. I actually, just so everybody knows, there's a really great piece, The Information has a podcast, and they did one last week called Pimp My Zoom. And it was all these different ways that you can, lights, LED lights, ring lights, all kinds of fun stuff. It's a good little listen. It's about 10 minutes. Ephraim, how do you trick out your LinkedIn? What should we be doing?
You mean like a LinkedIn profile?
Yeah. What's a good LinkedIn profile look like?
Well, we have lots of material on this. I think the core parts of it are, one, you have a really a good profile photo, which you can take with the portrait mode on any camera, smartphone is more than good enough. That really just focuses on more or less what you would see in a video conference. A nice headline where just kind of very quick, less than 10 words about you, either your current title or just something about who you are that you'd want someone to know, if they only could see 10 words about you. And then, the rest of your profile includes things like a summary, which you can get a little, longer, more narrative view of your background and why you do what you do. And maybe if you're looking for a job, what kind of job you're looking for and what that excites you about that. And then, of course, you want to include your prior work history. And that doesn't matter what that job is. That could be a job in retail, that which could be really relevant because jobs in retail mean you built those human skills that Ketan mentioned. That's those basic conflict resolution skills that I remember learning, I learned when I was dealing with angry customers as a cashier at Shaw's Supermarket in high school. Those skills are still apply to the work that I do now, or when I was working at the gym in college. So I think it's important to have all that experience on your profile. Also, you never know, whenever I meet somebody who worked at a grocery store growing up, or especially if they worked at Shaw's, which is a New England grocery store chain, it's something that could bring someone together. That could be the connection point that really matters. One thing that we also talk about is building out your network on LinkedIn. The network gap is a phenomenon that we talk about LinkedIn, where folks, based on where they grew up, who their parents knew, or what their parents did, how that leads to them not having the same network as other people. What I will tell you is in a situation like that, what we're going through right now, networks are even more important. Many people are having to transition from one job to another job that they may not be exactly like the job they had done before. They're transitioning from an industry that's declining to an industry that's growing. And they may have the skills that are relevant. They may have have done a job that is somewhat similar to what they want to do now, but they've never done an exact job in that exact industry. And the difference in many cases between somebody getting that job or not getting that job is having someone to vouch for you. And so that's why it's really, really important to build your network. And we always say that having at least 30 connections on LinkedIn is what it takes to get the flywheel of going. Of course, more connections of people who you actually know, who you could actually rely on to make an introduction. If you wanted to work at Zendesk, you may not be connected to Rachel, maybe you will after today, but if you're connected to someone who knows Rachel, that could be as good, if not better. And to having somebody who could reach out to her and say, hey, this is a really strong candidate for a job. And so I would,
you at least get seen, right?
Yeah,
I do tell people
exactly.
that's really important, is to find a commonality where you can get yourself in front, because we'll get 500, 800 applicants for a job. And sometimes just physically, we can't get through all the resumes. But if you flag me or one of my team members, you're in front of us, in front of the face. Really important.
Exactly. And then this other thing I would add is posting on LinkedIn the way you post on any other social media network is really important. Could be a signal of what interests you. And it's something that if you're on the recruiting side with the recruiter tools of LinkedIn, those are things you might see about somebody and help you think about, well, if I've got all these people, I only can interview 10 of them, and a hiring manager is only going to actually talk to 5 of them. What are the ways that you can differentiate yourself on LinkedIn? And certainly having a complete profile, having a strong network, and being active on the platform are some of the ways you can do that.
That makes sense. I just want to add, we started doing these webinars a few weeks back, and I'm getting notes on LinkedIn of folks that maybe had no other way to get connected to me in SF City and our membership, and they're sending notes saying, I saw you hosted this webinar. I really enjoyed what you said about XYZ. Can we connect? And I always say yes. So there's so many different entryways to connecting with people in your network.
Absolutely. And adding a note whenever you want to connect with somebody who you may not know directly is a really, really great strategy. If Jen is adding 100% of the people who add a note like that, and I'm generally the same way, if it's a note that shows why they're wanting to connect, that goes a long way. And in many cases, you might want to reach out to someone who you don't know, and that's totally okay. And that adding a note when you send the connection request can be really valuable.
Keaton, do you have anything to add? And then we'll go to the audience questions.
Oh, so much on this one. We talk about a lot in coaching. And I do think connections are important. I actually think what's really important is conversations. If you're looking for a job and you jump out there and that's the first thing you say in a conversation, that's not connecting, right? You want to see about what you can offer first. And so typically what we tell in coaching is with job seekers, find 2 or 3 people that are doing what you want to be doing. And just message them and say, hey, I read your article on Medium or LinkedIn or wherever, and I really like this point. What did you mean when you said this, right? Engage in a conversation, right? Create that connection and that conversation. And then you can build up and say, hey, do you have 15 minutes to chat? I'd love to, learn about how you got into this career because I'm considering getting into a similar one, right? Especially if you're changing careers. I would say everyone should have 3 archetypes, right? Here's the 3 people I think I admire, how they've gotten into it, right? Because often we think of networking as a very transactional thing. And at some point it can be transactional, but you really want to make it a conversational thing. You really want to connect to people, ask them what their needs are. We're seeing things like people reaching out to on Twitter, the CEOs of companies. We're seeing people doing like TikTok and writing their own websites, and like find unique ways to stand out and really connect rather than just saying, hey, banging on the door, I need a job, right? Because it's hard to connect for anyone of that, right? So that's a really common thing we see when coaching. If you're reaching out to folks that you don't have connections with, try to find some sort of connection, right? What article they write out, what company they work at, and talk about their product. Hey, I love that you have this feature on this product. What do you think about this idea, right? Like providing value from day one is super valuable. And people, if you do it right, I mean, I don't want you to be hypercritical, but like if you provide value, be like, hey, I love this one feature. What do you think? Did you guys think about this? Could this work like that? And like really got to digging into saying, hey, I care about your company as well, right? Because we often think when we're hiring or looking for a job that these are just like these faceless, nameless recruiters and hiring managers and they don't care about us. No, they're real people and they're struggling with their own struggles. And they want to work with people that care about them, just like you do, right? So I think creating an honest connection and really understanding who they are really helps. And then you're not just networking, you're actually making friends.
All right. I got a bunch of questions. I'm going to direct them to each of you individually, kind of break them up a little bit. So, Keitan, let's start with you. What QA schools in San Francisco do you recommend?
Ooh, I'm not sure if I could answer this question. When you say QA schools, do you mean specific?
Quality assurance.
Yeah, no, but they mean specifically from the tech industry, right? Doing QA okay. So I think typically this is a great time to upskill. There are organizations for like sales upskilling, for tech upskilling, for account management upskilling. I'm actually not familiar typically with a QA one. Generally, a lot of QA. I have to look into that. I mean, that's a really good question. I'd love to dig into more and who to ask that and see what we can do to help them.
And what would you recommend for sales? That was a big question I got a lot of. Yeah.
There's a lot of great programs for sales. SB Academy is one right now. I think Pathrise has some sales stuff. There's a couple other ones coming out there. Edio is another one. There's a lot of great sales training too, and sales can be completely remote. And sales is a great role to get into if you are a self-starter, you're great at communication, you know how to make friends really easily. So there's a lot of organizations that, maybe after the call we can provide a set of links to what people can go to. I also definitely think with sales, there's some really fantastic books out there, right? There's some like really amazing knowledge. There's a great, like I said, upskilling is probably the most valuable thing you can do. Right? I'm upskilling right now. I'm learning new stuff, right? Everyone should be upskilling right now. So books are a fantastic resource for that.
All right, Rachel, how can someone get into customer success? What skills could be applicable to a customer success role?
It's a good question. I would say that getting into customer success often means you have really good project management skills and you've done some sort of people-facing training, or I've hired people out of education that were teachers that had to put together all of their own, obviously lesson plans, that kind of thing. And it's the idea that you need to work your way up like any job, right? So to be a customer success associate, which is handling SMBs, proving how have you worked with SMBs? Have you ever done any type of training? Have you put together curriculum? Have you especially presented online ever? Like, do you have some of those skills that are really, really reputable right now? People transition from several different jobs. Customer advocacy, which is support, we call support. People are transferring out of sales and moving into that side from marketing. I mean, you don't have to have one skill set is what I would say to be in customer success. It's really, again, like what was mentioned before, how you connect, how you provide value, and how you catch the initial attention to then be able to display your skills and being really thoughtful with it. Not just like, I want to get into customer success, what should I do? That's a very open-ended question, right? Where it's like, well, what have you done? It'd be good to start with like 3 or 4 bullets of things that you do that you think applies to the job itself. And then ask to have a further conversation, right?
And to clarify on that, small and medium-sized business is SMB.
Sorry. Yeah. I get hit with
All
my
good.
acronyms all the time. Yes.
Actually, that's a really good point to bring up, though, when you're applying for jobs. Know the lingo.
Yep.
It's very, especially if you're changing careers and you don't know the acronyms and the lingo people are using, like listen to talks, listen to podcasts, because one of the sure quick fire signs to be like, kind of declined outright is like, oh, you don't know what this is? And that can easily be like, well, not that I don't want to hire you, but there's someone who knows what this is, right? And so like know the lingo, know the verbiage of the industry you're going into. And there's great places to find that. There's often a lot of jargon dictionaries out there. There's often a lot of podcasts that talk about these kind of terms, watch interviews of people, but knowing the jargon often is a very great way to say like, hey, I'm also a part of this.
Yeah, I think it's important to think, like, as you mentioned, hiring managers are people, right? We're all people. A lot of times they're slammed. They're so busy and they can't wait to have another person on. And they're thinking in their mind, how fast can they take some of the work, right? So I think it's like really showing how you could make an immediate impact in the first 30, 60, 90 days, as opposed to really open-ended questions of like, what do you think I could do? Or something like being proactive. And even if you're wrong, it's like, well, I'm glad you thought about it. That's not what I would have you do in 90 days, but here's what you could do, just like being that person that's going to be what we call a quick ramp. And that doesn't mean that you have to come from tech. We've hired great people. I have a Madison, Wisconsin office of 480 people. There's no tech companies there. Some of my best recruiters didn't come from tech, but they have those skills of being like a quick ramp, quick study, really, really effective quickly. So.
Yeah, I think the books and podcasts are a really good tip. Ephraim, I have a question for you from Jeff. You mentioned including all of your past jobs on your LinkedIn profile. Is there any sort of negative that you've seen relating to ageism and what that could look like?
So I've been asked about this a lot. We do a lot of training with the public workforce system, who overwhelmingly, at least historically, has served older workers. And, my response is the benefits that come from having work experiences that, as Ketan mentioned, can help you find connection with other people will outweigh having a lot of work experience that might show your age. I think having a dynamic photo goes a long way too. And if you can talk about your experience, what's important is to talk about the experience in a way that relates to the jobs or the type of work you want to do. So it doesn't matter where in your career, because you could be talking to a hiring manager who also started their career, at a Ben & Jerry's scoop shop or at some other industry, some other job. And that's a point of connection that, when they're looking at a whole bunch of resumes or a whole bunch of LinkedIn profiles, that could be something that gets you to stand out from the crowd. So I think you want to have as much of your experience on a LinkedIn profile as possible.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. We have so many questions that are flowing in now, everybody.
Can I add something to the ageism?
You want to add, Keita? Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we all know ageism is a serious problem in hiring across industries, especially in tech. And I do value people talking about it openly. We actually had a big conversation in HireClub about it the other day, and especially how it impacts older women in terms of how we have to look and how we have to show up and things like that. And I think like Ephraim mentioned, a great picture does go a long way. I think showing that you're learning new things. So a recent course somewhere, a Udemy certificate, an online class that you're taking, showing that you're keeping up with trends is really, really important. Just because you went to college 20 years ago, like I did, it doesn't mean you're not able to learn new things. And I think every job in tech requires learning new things. I have to learn new things every day still. And so I think what people are really looking for is, can you learn quickly? And you like learning quickly, because all of these jobs involve that. And so that is, I think, one of the bigger questions people run into with ageism is like, I want to work with someone that's going to move as fast as I can. And that's, unfortunately, shows a lot of bias, right? It's unfortunately a really biased thing. But that doesn't have anything to do with age. That has to do with how your mind works, right? And how fast you learn and how quickly you're adaptable.
So I've had a number of different questions. I'm going to try to kind of compile them into one aggregate question for y'all. What kind of technical skills or certifications could people be doing to get themselves competitive for some of the hot jobs or growing job industries. Maybe we'll start with you, Rachel.
It's a big question because it really depends on the industry, right? I would say though that there's a lot of online courses you can do through some of the major universities, right? Some paid, some not. But like, I mean, Berkeley is an example. It's in our backyard if you're here in the Bay Area, and they do executive training, and they have all different kinds of executive training. So it just depends on what you're trying to get into. So non-tech is a big, it's a big bucket, right? So I think it is also just looking for the prototypes, the people that you say, like, I really appreciate their career trajectory. I really appreciate X, Y, and Z, and looking to see what they've done, setting up conversations, right? You can always have an external mentor if they're willing to, but really asking them like what's been applicable in a job and what's not. The worst thing I would want is people to do a bunch of technical backgrounds and trainings, and it's really what you need is just getting some of the soft skills, right? Like as opposed to all of these fancy things that stamp at the bottom of your LinkedIn. So it's tailoring it, right?
Fair enough. What would you say, and maybe we'll start with you, Ketan, what would you say is the best way to go about getting a mentor?
So obviously we're big proponents in coaching, and I want to make a distinction between mentorship and coaching, right? Mentorship is someone who has considerable experience in a specific role that can give you insight and feedback based on their particular knowledge. And a coach is someone who's there to help you be your best person on what you want to learn, right? And I think often it's hard to make that distinction. So I'm a big proponent of coaching. Obviously, I'm my own coach, and I recommend everyone getting a coach. With mentorship, I really think it's about, finding someone that you are kind of in awe of and being like, wow, you've done something really amazing. I would love to learn more. And often mentors can be very busy, right? And this is why we offer coaching a lot, because mentors have a limited range. Most people are mentors who can't mentor more than 2 or 3 people, right? So it's hard to do with the busy things that you're doing. What I would look for in a mentor or a coach is this person able to listen to me as well? Does this person have not the experience that I'm looking for, but this person solving skills that I want to acquire? What problems do they go through that I also see myself go through, right? And then the third thing with mentorship, it is a personal connection, right? It's a personal connection, and you want to kind of set up a system. We often say with coaching, you want to have a talk at least once a week. With mentors, usually it's once a month, based on scheduling. There are networks out there to find mentors, and there's obviously networks like Hire Club to find coaches. What I would really recommend is knowing what you want, right? I think the worst thing to come to a mentor and be like, I hate the thing of like, can I pick your brain for 15 minutes? Like, what does that mean? Picking your brain is one of those things, like when you're a mentor, it's like, I don't know what you mean. The more specific that you have in your questions and feedback, hey, I'm a PM, I used to be a veteran, and now I want to get into PM and tech. I'm really looking for, in the consumer world, what makes a PM tick? I would love to chat to you about that, right? Rather than just saying, let me pick your brain, because we're all getting hit with all these questions about, let me help you out. And if you're not specific, I don't know where to help you, right? And also, I think it upsells your personality and profile to the other mentor and the coach, because you're saying, I've done the work, I know what I want, right? So really present yourself in a really strong manner that way.
And then Ephraim, in terms of folks, we got a lot of questions about people trying to figure out how to make that referral or that connection. Anything that you would like to provide in terms of tips for referrals of folks maybe you don't know or you don't know well?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things. One, I think reaching out to people who you don't know. I think Ketan gave some amazing sentence frames. My wife's a former English school teacher. I think that was like, those are really good sentence frames. Who switched to tech in the last year, which is a whole nother story. But I think Ketan's examples of how those sentences about, hey, I saw you wrote this, I want to know what you meant by that. That's a great question. People love to talk about what they are passionate about. People love to talk about themselves. So anytime you can ask someone to talk about themselves, they're very likely to respond positively. So I think that would be really good. I do want to take one moment to kind of respond to the question about certifications. in credentials, because I actually think this may sound a little wonky, but what's more important than a credential or certification is something we'll call a credible skill signal. A credible skill signal could be a credential. It could be a certification. It could be that you did the job before. You had some experience where you had the job. It could be that you took a class, like a LinkedIn Learning course or something small and very, precise. It could also just be that somebody knows you could do the job. And so in many cases, there are people who will do all the certifications, but they don't have the network to validate that for someone else, even if they pass some exam. And so I would just reinforce that yes, you could go get the certification. Yes, you could go get those credentials. And in some cases that's required. But doing that without having a network that can back up all the other skills you need, because for many of the jobs, you're still, even if it's in demand, you're still going up against a whole lot of people for any opening. So I would just really encourage you to think broadly about the signals that would signal to a recruiter and a hiring manager that you could do the job.
Solid. All right. Let's wrap this bad boy up. I'm going to do 2 quick lightning round questions. We'll start with you, Rachel. What local restaurant are you most looking forward to eating at when the pandemic subsides? Go.
Tutu's in Lafayette. I love them. I love the staff. I was a local there. I miss them.
Eitan?
Sushi. We're not supposed to, any sushi really, because we're not supposed to be eating, food that's not cooked right now. And so I'm not even buying sushi at the grocery store because I'm a little bit worried about, the virus stuff. Particularly, I like onsen in the North Nob Hill. You're right. Okay. Fantastic spot.
I see you're unmuted. You're ready to go.
Yeah. So I live in Mission Bay, and there's this awesome group of food trucks called Spark Social that's right there. And, it's really great to go out there with the kids, especially being so young. We can't really, sitting in a restaurant is a giant ask. So being able to get there. Also, there's supposed to be a GOTS and a dumpling time that had just opened up at the Chase Center that we were really excited to go to and get like soft serve. So we're really excited when those will finally open up.
All right, and I'm looking for Millennium in Oakland. I really could go for Millennium. Okay, so let's close this off. If you guys just want to provide, since we are at 5, just a few quick words of the best career advice you would like to leave everybody with. Let's start with you, Kaitan, then Ephraim, then Rachel.
Go build something. Whether you're a developer or designer, put something out on the web that other people can use, especially if you're a junior and you don't have the experience yet or you're changing careers. You can build. You don't need anyone's permission to build. And often I find the candidates that I hire, we're actually making an offer for junior and junior day. I've actually just signed the paperwork. So we're hiring for that. It was someone who showed that they could build on their own. You don't have to wait for permission to succeed.
Great. Ephraim, real quick.
You probably hear ad nauseum, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I just would probably double click on that. And the one thing I'd add is one of the things that I have done a lot is I try to have conversations with people, and then, or like even when I have conversations with people who are interested in learning about my career, I learned something about how to have that conversation that I might want to use when I want to have a career conversation with somebody else. And so I would just really encourage folks to have a lot of conversations with people, because you're going to learn ways you might want to communicate and model really good, effective behaviors that you may have seen in others.
Rachel?
Yep, 2 things. Growth and success is not always defined as going up the ladder. It can be moving sideways or even moving down, cutie, to take a step up and to rise up. And I think also it's a really good thought, especially right now when times are a little tough, is assume best intent from everybody. When there's something that's like causing you to adversely react or want to be that person that says like, no, assume best intent and just try to move forward that way. Creates more peace within group projects.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much to you 3 busy people for joining us, and to Lisa for joining us earlier. As a reminder, you can tag SF City and use the hashtag break into tech to tell us what you thought about today or anything interesting you learned. Okay, and I'm sure we're getting a bunch of LinkedIn connection requests after this. So thank you very much, everyone, and we will be in touch. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.